Hello, everyone. Welcome once again to the Self-Knowledge course. Today we have a very interesting conference where we will learn how to reach the state of meditation known as Samadhi, or the Illuminating Void, through the use of Koans. This is a simple and practical way to experience the reality of the sixth and seventh dimensions of nature. These dimensions are governed by 6 and 3 laws, respectively, in contrast to the physical world, where we are subject to 48 laws. To live this meditation is to experience, even for a moment, freedom from the ego and union with our inner, real being. Such an experience completely changes our perception of life and makes us understand the urgency of making a radical change within ourselves to free ourselves from the heaviness and mechanicalness imposed by our ego. When we return from this type of meditation, we come back with renewed strength to continue our inner work and to permanently achieve those states of plenitude and happiness. The objective of today's conference is to learn a technique that allows us to know and experience those higher dimensions of nature and to access the vast wisdom of our own being. Let us begin by reflecting on what meditation truly is. Meditation is the means to achieve inner silence and to connect with our own inner wisdom. It is said that meditation is the bread of the wise, because our consciousness is nourished when we eliminate the ego, which is ignorance within us, and we receive the wisdom of our inner Father. That is why it is essential to learn to meditate, since those who do not know how to meditate will never be able to dissolve the ego. And to truly learn to meditate, we must begin by becoming serious and setting aside the many superficial meditations that exist everywhere, which do not lead us to real change within ourselves. There are many different types of meditation available everywhere today. However, we can group them into 2 main categories: pseudo-esoteric meditations and transcendental meditations. Pseudo-esoteric meditations are, in truth, a waste of time if we genuinely want to make progress in our inner work. These types of meditations do not bring real change within us. They are beautiful practices that can make us feel relaxed, harmonious, or at peace for a moment while we listen to soothing sounds or focus on something pleasant. But the harmony and calm we feel from such meditations last only as long as the practice itself. Since they do not transform us internally, the moment we face the inevitable circumstances of life, such as disappointment, accidents, arguments, or identification with problems, we quickly lose that inner peace we had achieved. In contrast, meditations of a transcendental nature do lead us to transformation. Each time we practice one of these meditations, we become different people. We gain new insights that bring about a radical change in our inner world, and by the law of correspondence, in our external life as well. In this self-knowledge course, we have already learned one form of transcendental meditation, reflective meditation, which we studied in Lecture 22. In that lecture, we saw that reflective meditation involves bringing into our practice a lived experience in which a psychological defect we wish to eliminate strongly manifested itself. Then, during the meditation, we carefully observe the manifestation of that defect in detail. We divide ourselves into the observer and the observed, and we analyze what the defect made us think, feel, imagine, and desire. At the same time, we consciously understand and eliminate each of the aspects of that defect that we discover within that scene. Every reflective meditation we perform brings about self-transformation, because the next time we encounter a similar situation in which that same defect used to appear, we will no longer react in the same way. We will have gained understanding, which allows us to act consciously, free from the control and enslavement of that defect. The wonderful thing about this practice is that we can apply it to any psychological defect we wish to eliminate: anger, jealousy, depression, anxiety, trauma, phobias, and so on. And now, we come to the second type of transcendental meditation, which is the one we will study today: meditation to achieve Samadhi. Today we will learn a very interesting and simple technique to reach that state of meditation using koans. When one truly longs for wisdom, there is no other choice but to learn to meditate. To meditate is to enter the 6th and 7th dimensions, and this can only be achieved in one way: by gagging, that is, silencing and immobilizing the ego, and freeing the essence. Once we learn how to do this exercise, it becomes very simple. Koans will help us to silence the ego so that the essence can be released. In this way, we can momentarily escape the limits of our lower nature and ascend to the higher dimensions, the heavens. As we saw in lessons 5 and 6, when we spoke about the dimensions and where they are within us, the 7 basic dimensions of nature also have their representation inside each of us. Therefore, it is by entering our inner world that we can connect with these dimensions. The first 5 dimensions within us correspond to what we might call the earth, which is currently populated by a multitude of eyes, or psychological defects. In contrast, within the 6th and 7th dimensions, we find the heavens, or the so-called kingdom of heaven. In the lower part of the 6th dimension lies the causal world. By entering that world through meditation, we can come to know the cause of all things, including the origin of our own errors and wrong ways of being. There we receive essential knowledge that helps us advance in the disintegration of the ego. At the higher level of the 6th dimension, we find the world of truth, the Buddhic world, where we can perceive all that exists, all that has been, and all that will be. And in the 7th dimension, we connect directly with the great reality, the ocean of light, which is the source of all wisdom. There we can unite with Atman, our innermost. So in this meditation, we will make our essence ascend from the 3rd dimension, where it resides within us at the level of the sexual center, up through the tunnel of light that is our spinal column, until it reaches the superior centers. If you have ever tried to meditate, you have surely realized that the mind becomes a tremendous obstacle. When we attempt to concentrate, all kinds of thoughts, emotions, and even physical sensations arise within us. All of these are manifestations of our ego, which does not want us to free ourselves. Therefore, to reach the state of meditation, it is necessary to gag the ego, that is, to silence and immobilize it, so that the essence can ascend. As we saw in the lecture about the law of the pendulum, our ego is dual in nature. It constantly swings between positive and negative extremes, between pleasure and pain. Inside ourselves, we find a variety of negative thoughts, emotions, and sensations such as suffering, decadence, materialism, passivity, and disgust. Likewise, at the opposite pole, we encounter activity, pleasure, sentimentality, euphoria, and spiritualism. If we manage to find balance, if we discover that exact middle point where neither extreme manifests, we will find inner silence. And when that silence is achieved, we experience the stillness of the mind. Now, how do we reach that middle point, that stillness of the mind? We do it through a very simple method. We make use of the power of conscious imagination. The first step is to develop an evolutionary thought by imagining the process of growth or development of something. It can be the growth of a fruit tree, a flowering plant, an animal, the construction of a house, the formation of a human being, anything you can easily visualize in as much detail as possible. For example, we can imagine planting a small seed and watching it germinate. We see the sprout emerging from the soil, the trunk growing, leaves unfolding, buds forming, flowers opening, until the plant reaches the peak of its development, vibrant, beautiful, and full of fragrance. In this way, we activate the positive pole of our psychology. Immediately afterward, we develop an involutionary thought. We imagine the opposite process, the decay and death of what we have just seen grow. If it is a plant, we visualize how it begins to wither, lose its flowers, turn yellow, dry up, and eventually crumble until nothing remains of that once beautiful plant. Through this process, the negative pole of our psychology becomes active, and when we reach the point where nothing remains, the mind becomes blank, and we experience stillness, true mental silence. At that moment, we take advantage of the state and launch the koan, so that the ego is gagged and the essence can easily escape and ascend to the higher dimensions. What is a koan? A koan is a question that has no ordinary answer, often paradoxical. The mind instinctively tries to answer, but it cannot because the answer is not available to it. As the thought process exhausts itself, essence is able to arise. The ego is silenced, and the essence is briefly released. There are many different koans, but here are 4 that are particularly effective. Ask yourself, 2 hands clap, and there is a sound. What is the sound of one hand clapping? Focus on how one hand makes a sound and remain with that question until the essence escapes. Ask, if all things are reduced to unity, what is unity reduced to? Remain still with the question and wait for the movement to stop. Ask, where is the truth? Wait patiently for an answer. If the mind offers an explanation, ignore it because it is not the truth. Continue waiting until the mind exhausts itself and the essence escapes. Ask, where is the void? Seek the gap, and when you perceive it, remain there, continually asking, where is the void, until you see the opening. Use the koan until the escape occurs. The first koan is especially powerful. Imagine what one hand sounds like. Remain with that perception, and wait until your essence is released. An important rule to remember is to use only one koan per practice. Let's now see a brief, practical step-by-step for the practice so you will feel encouraged to try it. First, find a quiet place. You may practice during the day or at night, at the office, or anywhere you will not be disturbed, or in a space you have reserved for meditation. Such a place matters, because it becomes a location to seek power and wisdom, and it is therefore special. Harmonize the environment by removing negative energies. You can do so with the chant of Belilin, then seal the space so negative energies cannot re-enter, using the conjuration of the magic circle of protection. We studied these conjurations in Lecture 7. Next, ask for the assistance of your inner being, God within you, to guide the practice. Then we will do a simple relaxation exercise to bring ourselves into harmony. First, we will relax our emotional center by breathing deeply for a few minutes. Inhale slowly and deeply through the nose, and exhale gently through the mouth. Next, we will relax the mind. For a few minutes, concentrate on the sounds around you without identifying with them. Listen to a sound, let it go, then seek another one, gradually focusing on sounds that are farther and farther away. Afterward, bring your attention back to the closer sounds until finally returning to your own heart. You will begin to notice how the mind becomes quiet and serene. Then, we will relax the physical body. Make sure your body feels comfortable and that nothing disturbs it. You can visualize a warm, radiant light slowly moving through your whole body, relaxing it completely. Once you feel calm and relaxed, we can proceed to the next step. Now, we will introduce what we call the evolutionary thought. Visualize, in as much detail as possible, that you are planting a rose seed. See yourself preparing the soil, fertilizing it, planting the seed, watering it, and exposing it to the sunlight. Observe how the small sprouts begin to emerge. Watch how they grow and bloom until the entire rosebush becomes full of beauty and life. You can even imagine perceiving its fragrance. At that point, we introduce the involutionary thought. Imagine how the petals begin to dry and wither, how no more flowers appear, and the plant begins to fade completely. The wind arrives and knocks it down, carrying away the stems and dry leaves, until nothing remains of that rosebush. In that moment, we reach the synthesis of thought, the stillness of the mind. Now we apply the koan. For example, we may ask ourselves, if these two hands clap and there is a sound, what is the sound of one hand? Then we simply wait for the answer, without trying to invent one. The koan acts as a barrier for the ego, allowing the essence to ascend freely. Remain focused on the question until the moment of liberation occurs. There are certain symptoms that can let you know when you are approaching the state of meditation. You may begin to feel as if you are detaching from the physical world. You might perceive a tunnel of light and feel as though you are being drawn into it. Do not be afraid. Allow yourself to be carried toward the light. If fear arises, it is a sign that you still need to work on your attachments, as we explained in the previous lecture. You might also find yourself consciously imagining or entering a lucid dream where you can move freely and act with full awareness. Sometimes you may feel a light dizziness. And another sign is the sense of unity, the experience of becoming one with everything that exists. I truly hope you feel inspired to try this practice. Remember to practice with patience until you succeed, because through constant practice, perfection is achieved. That was today's lecture. You can leave your questions in the comments if you wish to share your experiences or doubts. In our next lecture, we will learn another practice, a very simple and highly effective method to achieve astral projection, known as the jump. So, don't miss the next conference. Thank you all very much for your attention. Until next time, keep working on yourself.